My name is Alberto Rossi. I'm a professor of finance here at Georgetown, and I'm also the director of the AI Analytics and Future Work Initiative, which exactly studies how AI analytics is changing how companies operate, how markets are operating, and what are the skills needed to be successful in the future. So this is a panel that is very, very close to my heart. Today we have two fantastic panelists, Michael Bush and Dan Diasio. Let me just starting introducing both panelists, starting with Michael Bush. Michael Bush is the CEO of Great Place to Work, the global research and analytics firm that produces the annual Best Companies to Work For list. And this is across a range of different categories within Fortune 100, across the world, and so on and so forth. Michael is a former member of President Obama's White House Business Council and a founding member of the private equity seed fund, Fund Good Jobs, which invests in small inner city businesses. And Michael was a member of the board of directors at Workday until September 2021, when Great Place to Work was acquired by UKG. Thank you so much, Michael, for being with us.
Thank you, Alberto.
We then have Dan Diasio. Dan is a seasoned technology executive and currently EY's Global and Americas Consulting Artificial Intelligence leader. In this role, Dan is responsible for setting the strategy of the consulting business powered by AI, driving strategic partnerships, supporting EI's largest clients in their AI transformation, and upskilling the over 120,000 EY global professionals to be proficient with AI. Thank you so much, Dan, to be with us.
Thank you, Alberto.
So we have a ton of ground to cover, but before starting with the actual panel, I would love to have both Michael and Dan introduce themselves, give us a sense of how their experiences and career path brought us to being such expert in new technologies inside and outside the workplace. So maybe we can start with Michael.
Sure. I was going to say you, Dan. So I have no idea how my career and experience brought me to where I am now. You know, there's a story, but I really have no idea. I studied engineering as an undergraduate, went to Silicon Valley, Hewlett-Packard as an engineer, left there, went to healthcare, and then went back to business school after 15 years of working, went back full time. And that was a big change. When I came out of business school, I decided I'm not going to work for anybody ever again. So that was the biggest change. And so I started a series of companies and a series of acquisitions. And then I started doing work for small private equity firms that had made investments that didn't go very well. So turnarounds, which I absolutely loved. And that was a great experience. And then I was hired by the founder of Great Place to Work to sell Great Place to Work in 2014. I ended up buying it with a partner for a really good price. But so that worked out. And then, as you mentioned, sold Great Place to Work 2 years ago. And I'm still at UKG, the acquiring company today. That's it.
Thank you. Dan?
My story. So I come from a family of accountants. So I had to go to school to study accounting. It was part of the Diasio tagline. But while I was in school, I felt that many of the folks that really focused on business didn't understand how the computers worked all that well. And there was an opportunity to be able to bridge the two. So I did an undergraduate in accounting, another separate degree in information science with a specialization in computer science. And when I went to work, I wanted to keep all my options open. So I did a specialization in philosophy and economics and just wanted to keep all the doors around. I have spent most of my time, I've been with Ernst & Young for 19 years now. And my time there has been really focused on taking emerging technology and making it real for businesses. I don't go too deep and geek out too much in the technology. We have wonderful teams that can school me in that every day. But what I found is that gap still persists. And it still exists with AI today, that what's possible in the world is, and from a technology perspective, and what's possible in the world from a business perspective are not yet connected. So I spend most of my time working with large corporations in the Fortune 500, helping them use this technology as a force for good, whether it's to be able to create value, reduce costs, drive productivity, or take on social and environmental issues. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So the first part of the panel, I'd like to focus on like the current state of tech and its impact on firms, companies, and society. And I would like to start with you, Dan. So AI is now this buzzword that is thrown around all the time in the media. But when it comes to the individual companies, it's not always clear that automation and the adoption of this AI can improve companies' profitability and the product that they deliver. So can you give us some examples of what are the major problems that new technologies like AI can solve, and instead, what are the biggest misconceptions regarding AI? So what are the kind of tasks that we're still very, very far away to solving with AI, and where we still need humans in terms of completing those tasks?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot there. I'll keep this fairly short, and I will not get too deep into generative AI yet. We'll save that for a little bit later in the discussion. But AI is a buzzword that many people have been using since November 2022. Generative AI has become the buzzword. It was the fastest growing technology to get 100 million active users on it. It was literally on the front page of just about every newspaper at some point in time in the months of February and March. But for years, AI, artificial intelligence, has been something that organizations have been focused on, but in many cases, organizations were often thinking about this as a startup within the company. You grab a team of really smart data scientists, you ring fence them, you ask them to go identify where the use cases are in the organization that can provide value, and you fund them based on that. And if they deliver value, you give them some more money. It was kind of this startup that really grew from the inside out of the organization. Generative AI has changed that pretty significantly because now we have boards asking the executives questions about what the strategy is for the organization, how they're going to create value. And we'll come to some of that conversation in a bit. But what's possible now, many companies are using generative AI or just artificial intelligence to be able to power a lot of their business. I'll give an example. Forecasting. If anybody has ever had to go fulfill a prescription in a pharmacy, when you get the prescription written to you and they ask you where your pharmacist is, the pharmacy doesn't have this massive inventory of every type of pill in the back of that small little room where they go to fulfill the prescriptions. They've forecasted what are the quantities of that particular drug that I need in that particular store on that particular day, based on the type of people that exist in that area, based on the conditions that exist in that area, and the buying is happening on a daily basis. So that's one example. Power and utility companies are now using satellite images to be able to figure out where there's overgrowth over power lines, and they can send crews in advance of a storm to be able to trim the power lines and keep your power on for as long as possible. So those are a couple of scenarios. We'll get into a bunch more as we go. The biggest misconception, though, is that AI does not solve everything at this point right now, and it also doesn't think like humans think. There's this world that we wish artificial intelligence operated in, a world that is ethical, a world that has rules and standards and knows what good is. But the AI that we live in the world today is based off of the world of data, which often you imagine, Twitter, or you imagine some of these places where a dialogue that is not always unbiased or is not always truthful is playing out. That's the world that the AI systems were built in. And I'll give you just one little example. There is a very famous case where AI was trained to be able to predict cancer lesions for dermatologists. And the system was proving accuracy that was better than any of the dermatologists. So they got ready to roll it out. But right before they rolled it out, they asked the question, how does this system actually work? Can we assign a bunch of scientists to be able to unpack how the system works? And after a bunch of studying, they found that, yes, it's very good at predicting where the cancer is, because every time there's cancer, there's a ruler in the picture set to be able to create scale for how big the lesion is. The dermatologist sees that there's cancer and leaves a ruler in the picture. So the AI is not predicting the tumor, it's predicting where the rulers are. And until they asked the question, we didn't know that. We need to be skeptical of all the AI systems. And the biggest misconception is that it just works, that it's magic. So.
Yeah, that's, thank you. So In terms of kind of, from a company's perspective, Michael, instead, we know that, so you spent years trying to understand and performing people analytics and understanding what makes for a great corporation. So how is this changing over time? So how is technology changing kind of how companies are kind of creating places that make them competitive when it comes to competing against other firms, but they also make themselves desirable places to work at?
Well, in terms of, as Dan said, people adopt technology because it's going to help them get some competitive advantage or keep a competitive advantage. And if a company can find that, they're going to run over every skeptic in the room. If there's just a momentum that comes from capitalism, this is my opinion. Don't tweet what I just said. That's, I think I've got story after story of that through my lifetime. Voicemail, email, I can go on and on and on, where I watched rooms of people no longer be needed based on something. And there was skepticism, but if it works, it's just gonna take off. So doesn't mean we have to lose our conscience, but a great workplace is built on trust. This is the issue. It's built on trust. We survey over 18,000 companies a year in 170 countries, 97 languages, 18 million people every year all around the world. So we know a lot about working people in every industry on earth. It's trust. Doesn't matter what country you're in. There may be different expectations, but it's trust. People want to trust the person that they work for, their immediate supervisor, not their CEO. They want that person to be respectful, honest, and fair. And they want to enjoy the people that they work with. We measure that through 60 questions. And I can tell you what makes someone feel like it's a high trust workplace, this place cares about me, and what makes it, I know more about ungreat workplaces than I do great workplaces. Okay, because that's the way the world operates. Well, now you bring in AI. Trust becomes even more important because no one understands, other than Dan, what's really happening in terms of AI. Yet companies are opening themselves up to it because they must. So that's the current tension. But I will tell you, as we have surveyed fear, which we have done around AI, no one fears AI. People fear people's use of AI. No one has been disrespected by a machine yet. Okay, but people, yes. So that's the issue. It's not there's AI fear, but it's really how are people going to use AI, and whether or not the people who are making decisions about AI, databases, uses, contracts, limits, refreshing, taking biases out on a continuous basis forever. If you believe in the people who are doing that work, I think it's gonna be a competitive advantage for a company. So I think there'll be some index at some point around kind of AI trustworthiness that'll need to be developed.
I think you touched on a very interesting point. So all these AI tools are kind of there to increase productivity. Of course, you can expect them to kind of be related to the salary of individuals. But I guess like through some of your surveys, like, do you have a sense to which how much individuals trade off kind of salaries as opposed to having better working conditions, living in a company that has, or working for a company that for which they trust the management, or have a company that instead tries to deliver goods to society? Like, what is the trade-off that individuals are now thinking about when it comes to the place where they want to work at?
So the simplest way to think about that is, if you take working people that are making less than $20 an hour, that's one story.
Okay.
And you take people who are making more than $20 an hour, that's another story. And people making more than $50 an hour, that's another story. So it's not like you can't put it all together, because it's completely different. People who are making more than $50 an hour will trade off.
Okay.
They will trade well-being for salary. People who are making less than 20 are like, I'll take the money. I'll take they're very smart people. They'll take the money. And well-being is about, does for a working person, any working person, does the company care about my physical health and the physical health of my family? Does the company care about my mental health and the mental health of my family? Does the company care about my financial health and the financial health of my family. That's it. Now, around the world, expectations are different, but everybody is looking for that. Everybody is hoping for that. That's well-being. It's those three things, being put together. And so people are determining whether to trust based on whether you're getting those things or not. Obviously, you can piece together, if you don't seem to care about my physical health, you don't seem to care about my mental health, you don't seem to care about my financial health, yeah, I'm going to trust your AI and the use of it. I doubt it. I doubt it. I think that's where these things are connected, and smart companies are going to continue to want to be great in the ways we're describing to have employees that trust the company. I think a barometer about whether, all of us with mobile phones, we've given a lot of our lives to a company. Based on the mobile phone you have, a lot of it. It knows where you are right at this minute and what you're likely to do later, because we're so predictable in our behavior. So that's happening. Well, I always wonder, this AI movement is making me think about the people in that company. Now, I happen to know something about them, but I think other people are going to want to know more about the people who are making decisions related to the technology.
I see. Yeah, perfect. And in terms of so you were touching on the fact that technology is kind of constantly evolving. And so I just want to think about what is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So, starting with you, Dan, you're on the ground trying to see what are the new kind of AI systems that are not rolled out yet. And so can you tell us how is AI evolving? So what tools are companies going to be able to deploy tomorrow that are unthinkable today? What is can you give us examples of how this is going to change global operations and products that companies are currently producing?
Yeah, absolutely. But first I want to go to a point, I will come to that, but one of the things we are starting to see, I think you raised a really good point. If I don't trust the company, how can I trust its use of AI? We are starting to see more companies move away from the term of artificial intelligence and think about it as augmented intelligence, change the A, because our job is to empower you, not replace you and your thinking. But coming back to your question, I think if we just figure out where we are right now. So AI was treated as a startup, as I was mentioning, maybe until November or somewhere around January. And then this has been gradually happening over time. The AI models today are built off of a system called a transformer that was invented or designed in 2017. And it's been slowly getting better and better. We rapidly reached a tipping point and kind of broke right through a tipping point in March with models like GPT-4. And those models, everybody knows this by this point, but the scores of these devices, now in your pocket, you have a data scientist you can ask questions to. Something that gets 1410 on the SATs, passes the bar, passes the CPA exam, and is a sommelier. Anytime you ask a question, it's right there in your pocket. Now, the interesting thing of where we are today is that the number of people that have downloaded that from a mobile app perspective and have stopped using it after 1 month, the rates of drop-off are the same as dating apps. And that's like 45% of people download it and then don't use it the next month. There's a big conversion that's used in tech. A lot of tech companies use to measure how adoptive or how sticky or how addictive their technology is. It's the conversion of monthly average users to daily active users. So for something like Instagram, that's 86%. 86% of people that use it on a monthly basis also use it on a daily basis. For ChatGPT, it's 14%. So we are in this world right now where we have this amazing technology, and I can't crystal ball gaze to figure out where the future is going to go. It's quite shocking. Just with the technology today, there will over the next 5 years, there will be a disruption that starts to take place. Most of what is happening today is we are empowering people with tools to be able to do their work better, the work that was designed as it is today. So you'll have a process flow that you go through, and now we give you an AI system to be able to do work in that process flow faster. That will be incrementally better for companies, to the point of capitalism. That will get you somewhere, but that won't provide you the differential value that people are both excited for and concerned about with AI. What we will start to see is that will shift over the next 5 to 10 years. So today's processes, today's work is people executing processes powered, presented with data powered by technology. And in the future, the technology will actually use the data to run the processes, and the people's jobs will change. It will go from somebody who's actually clicking all the buttons and screens on the software to ones that are watching all these buttons. And that will be a pretty significant and radical change, but we'll go in that direction because capitalism will take us there.
So one of the characterizations that I've seen is that people are arguing that kind of AI right now is is potentially going to kind of remove entry-level positions, and people will have to enter as middle managers, in a sense that some of the mechanical tasks will be taken care of by the technology. Do you think this is a correct characterization of what is happening now and what will happen in the future?
No, I think this is a game changer in the sense that it hits all levels of the pyramid. Let me give one example. There's a project that we've worked on at Ernst & Young, where a company, a manufacturer of watches, wanted to figure out how they could give their R&D team the ability to generate new watches faster. So they said, let's build a tool that gives my R&D person the ability to query what a watch design could look like and get maybe 5 or 10 versions of that. But as they thought about it more, they thought that's not that useful. I mean, we go through our R&D process once every 3 months, once every 6 months. So now I give somebody a tool that they can use once every 3 months or 6 months. Got them thinking about the change. Now the way the system looks is that it's mining social media data to identify influencers of watches. From those influencers of watches, it grabs the pictures of the watches that they're talking about, compares the characteristics of the watch to the portfolio that they have where there are gaps. It automatically generates a bunch of images, and it gives that to the R&D team. That is taking out senior level people, and not necessarily taking it out, because we haven't seen as many companies decide that they are going to just eliminate those. Instead, it's the reallocation of resources to problems that they maybe have not been able to put resources to in the past. But it is all levels. It's not just the work that we've offshored or the entry level positions.
And also another thing that I'm curious about, like in terms of the quit rate in the use of ChatGPT, do you think it's because of the fact that you have to type stuff in? Do you think that the fact that now they're introducing voice recognition and you'll be able to converse with ChatGPT is going to make a difference? Or is like do we need to get to the next level, the humanization of the bot, where you actually are talking to a person? Will that change things, or you think this is something that is not going to, it's just going to be some gimmicks that is not going to make a difference?
I think it's a problem with attention right now. And until we design the work for that to be central as part of the work, then I think we will continue to struggle with problems with what we call adoption or attention.
I see. Okay. So one thing that, so always kind of sticking to the next 5 to 10 years. So we have on the one side, we have technology and AI that is potentially going to be able to make us more productive, or in some cases, or potentially even substituting some of the labor. At the same time, we have this kind of major trends that started with COVID, with the Great Resignation. And now you seem to, I mean, the way I read the current situation is that it seems to me that now younger professionals want to have a better work-life balance. They want to also have potentially work for companies that make the world a better place. And so I want to ask Michael, so now that you're tracking all the companies, so how is this affecting the distribution of talent across different sectors, right? So I think that up to 5 to 10 years ago, you would imagine that graduate or undergraduate graduates would try to go and pursue careers in investment banking, in private equity, in hedge funds. Is it still the case? Are individuals or new graduates trying to move towards tech firms or other type of institutions that may not be requiring a lot of hours when it comes to work?
There's kind of two big ideas in what you said. So I would say that the students who graduated from Georgetown last year, since I'm here at Georgetown, beautiful campus, the students who graduated just had some ideas on what they wanted to do and applied to those things. The students who graduate in 2024, it's going to be very different. They're going to find people reaching out to them that they have no idea anything about the company or the person. That's what AI is going to do. It's happening right now because there are AI tools that have been built, companies formed and funded by venture capitalism that when there's a position can look at for 300 million people, can scrub all the way through LinkedIn, all the way through Facebook, all the way through a lot of other tools that people are using that they don't think can be scrubbed through, like Fishbowl, things like that. And they can find people based on interest, habits, things like that, that they've decided they need as skills. Because that college degree, I love Georgetown, but it is changing the importance of it based on skills companies need. You know, companies need people who are great team players. Companies need people who make other people in the room better, more than they need that MVP player, based on what's happening. So that reshuffling is occurring. AI is in the front of it. It's going to completely change. That student may think they're looking for a job. They're going to end up in a job that found them, and they may not have had any interest in it. The prior question around well-being, you know, there are these things we do where we say things like, young people today care about the planet. Young people today care about making a difference. Their parents did too. Okay, you know, it's just their parents, you know, their parents were like, look, I got a job and the check doesn't bounce, it's a great place to work. Okay, so that's the thing. I got 2 millennial sons. Against all their best efforts, their mother tells them, you're becoming more like your father every day. Okay, so this generational thing is clickbait. And by the way, I produce a lot of it. Okay, I've done the studies on the millennials. I got a Gen Z study coming out. But I am saying people have not changed. Something radically has not occurred to make people different at the core. Use of technology, very different. Isolation, very different. Trauma from COVID, very different. That's not a Gen Z thing. That's a person who came through at a tough time, just like somebody might have through the Vietnam War or World War II or a depression or a company that they had to be exiled from. So, you know, tragedy is something, but it's not a generational, you know, type thing. The other thing is on AI that you are finding younger people have almost no fear in it and see it as something positive, something that's going to make things better. Young people feel AI is going to make the world more equitable and fair. It's just a belief. You know, that they have, so which I find to be really encouraging as a possibility in terms of belief. But I believe that's also going to accelerate the adoption and the test. And the final point is, we've all lived through you know, how many of you remember Webvan? Any old people here? Good. All right. For you young people, you have to Google it. Okay, but Webvan was a company. This idea of using Wi-Fi that wasn't like Wi-Fi today. Okay, it was on a phone, and it only worked when you stayed in like an 8-block radius. But they were going to deliver things to your home. Imagine that. Okay, imagine that. PowerPoint deck, which as Professor in business school told me, he asked the question, what technology has lost more money for people than anything else? His answer was the color printer. Because if you stacked the bars and adjusted the y-axis in 1997, 98, you could raise a ton of money. And then all those companies crashed. They all crashed. But look at today. It actually happened. And you can just look through technology that has come, disrupted. Venture capital gets it right. Timing might be off, and the company they bet on might be wrong. They get it freaking right. So I believe they're going to get it right with AI too. Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to be rugged and disruption and people losing a ton of money. Of course that's going to happen. It's happened in everything that I'm aware of in terms of technology. But on the other end, it's actually going to happen. And so for everybody, it's experimenting, learning, staying open. Like I tell my sons, but I don't have to tell them. They're totally into it. My sons do their quotes on congratulating somebody to get married. They use ChatGPT. I've watched them. They're like, write her, and they go, it warmer, more hip. OMG! Exclamation point! Exclamation. Okay, it will do it. They're using it just every day. It's not a interesting new thing. It's something they're already using as a part of their life to be more productive.
And so always kind of related to the flexibility, One thing that I think is I would like to touch on is remote work. So remote work and flexibility in hours and location. This is something that is now becoming after COVID was before people moved towards having complete remote. Now you can see this wave of some companies asking their employees to go back. So how are you thinking about this issue within EY? And also when you do your surveys at Great Place to Work, what are the biggest lessons you can get from there in terms of what works and what doesn't work in remote work?
Yeah, I can go first. So during COVID, we came up with a policy called our Ways of Working, our WOW policy. And that was to be able to promote flexibility for our people. So we have a hybrid schedule that we still leverage today. Now, some of our clients are not on that, so we are dependent on our clients to support them in the best ways that we can to be able to help them meet their objectives. But what we are focused on at EY is to create, we realize that part of the consulting world is to get experience working together with people and to start to embrace that culture. And that's something we cannot be totally hybrid on, or that's not something we can totally be remote on. But there's a lot of wasted time and flexibility asking people to be in the office all the time. So what we focus on is to create meaningful experiences for people when they come to the office. And it's centered around a team meeting or a client discussion or a working session. And we do that every 2 weeks for a couple of days. That's usually the way that we found a blend to be able to help meet people where they are. We were talking about it in the room in the back. Many of the offices, depends on what day you go to, you'll either be a bunch of people or quite empty. In our New York offices, every Tuesday and Thursday, they must be giving drinks at the end of the day because they are mobbed with people every day. But that flexibility is the way we try to drive things at EY. Michael?
Yep. So I'm with 2 companies every week at their headquarters, and who have various policies. Everybody's adopted almost some degree of flexibility, at least, and it seems to be around the 3-day week, and some are tending to 4. Almost nobody is saying 5, though I do know some that are saying 5. Whenever I go to the company, which is 2 companies, leading companies every week, we walk through the office, it's like less than 35%. And they always say, oh, you should have been here yesterday. I haven't seen a yesterday yet. Okay, because I'm just looking at the real world and what's happening. So people are saying all kinds of things, have all kinds of feelings. If you just look at the data, it's not happening. Mm-hmm. It's not happening. It's like a 3-day week. Now, we have all kinds of best practices because a 3-day week randomly is worse for the business. People want to go in, you tell them 3 days a week and they just randomly go in and their whole team's at home. Mm-hmm. That didn't help them at all, pisses them off. Because now they commuted in to Zoom with their friends, and their teammates. So you have to say, everybody on the team in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That can work. Bringing in guest speakers, that can work. Good food can work. There's all kinds of things that people are doing, but the 5-day week is done in the office. Now I know somebody's like, oh, I know some exceptions. I think I know them too, but I'm just not gonna name them right now. But for the most part, that's over. Flexibility has won. It's not hybrid. It's not remote. That's not what people want. They want flexibility. The same thing every CEO wants. They want the ability, when something comes up in their personal life, to attend to it and for you to respect them enough to know they're going to stay up till midnight and get it done. And that's what people do. And people have proven that through COVID, what they're willing to do for their company. So it's not a crazy trade, but we do have a lot of low trust leaders. Mm-hmm. That's what I would call them in the world. But people have proven what they're willing to do to support a company and to support an economy. And when you tell them you can't be productive, they're like, are you crazy? Our company had its best years during COVID. Now look at balance sheets today. There are other things going on, but that in fact did occur. So you can't tell somebody they can't be productive, they can't do great teamwork. You can't tell people they can't innovate. They've already done it.
I see. Okay. So on this topic, and by the way, we are getting towards the end of the panel. So if anybody has questions, please raise your hand and get to the microphone. But one question that I have for you, Michael, before we open it to the audience, is there is still something I don't understand, which is how promotions are gonna happen. Like, do you think that the promotions for people that are working fully remote are gonna be not a problem? Is this gonna be easy or not easy to assess and kind of and promote someone to be a CEO if they live in a different state?
Okay, so we measure promotions all around the world, and we ask people about them. At a place that's a high-trust workplace, if you ask, are promotions fair? They will say yes. And then if you ask, how do people get promoted? They'll say, I don't know. Okay? People don't understand promotions or pay anywhere at any company. Okay, so that's reality. But a feeling can change their sentiment about it. This is what's important here. You're probably too young. Did you ever have, both of you guys are probably too young, but there used to be something for people like me. You had a can and a string, and okay, there's some old people here. Thank you, my friends. That see, there's like hands here. But that was a real thing. You could communicate because the sound would move through the string. There are people who could lead great with that technology. They can lead, great leaders can lead through Zoom, WebEx, pick your name. Great leaders can lead and never have met the person and do so every day. Poor leaders, it doesn't matter how much technology you give them. Okay, they're poor leaders. They don't connect with people. They don't listen to people. They don't care about people. They don't know how to develop people. They aren't changing. They're static. They're outstanding individual performers, as Jim Collins would call them, who got promoted because they're outstanding ICs. This is not a technology thing. This is not a Zoom thing. This is nothing about that. You promote people, hopefully, on performance. And now, if you're terrible at measuring performance, which a lot of companies are, you have a whole issue, but that has nothing to do with how, come in the office so you can get promoted, maybe due to some old behavior. And if you need to come in the office to get promoted, I would argue your culture is built on politics and power rather than on performance.
Hi, Dan and Michael. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on AI. I've been in the AI space over the last decade at Deloitte now, and before that, IBM Watson. And just wanted to get your perspectives. You mentioned capitalism driving a lot of the adoption of AI, but how are you seeing CEOs deal with the issue of trustworthiness with the data? And I think there's been a lot of talk about the EU AI Act. But in the US, there's a lot of congressional kind of sessions by a lot of the Gen AI leaders. But what is your perspective, and how are you looking at this kind of shaping up in the next 12 months? Because I feel like a lot of the debate on Gen AI is not whether someone should spend $20 a month on Microsoft Copilot, but it's more that are you in fact kind of perpetuating the same data challenges, whether it's fairness in lending or other topics, on a go-forward basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, regulation will likely come out of Europe first, and then there's a lot of discussion about different options that are coming through the U.S. Both the House and the Senate have both their proposed policies. It's likely that neither of those will get through this current administration, just with just like we need to keep the government open first. So, however, what we are finding is that many companies are starting to recognize that regulation will come in the future, and they need to start self-regulating today. And they do that through a principles-based approach. So that often means that at many mature companies, they are setting up an AI governance board that are sitting with a couple of members, including legal, operations, compliance, the technology office, to set policies of how the company is going to be using AI. From those policies, they create a set of procedures, and then they monitor those procedures. They assess the AI that they start working on today on, is it high risk, medium risk, low risk, prohibited, taking some guidelines from what has either started in financial services or what is coming through the EU AI Act, and are starting that process now. Because if they don't do that now, then worst case scenario, what they are doing today will be illegal tomorrow. Best case scenario, they will have an incredible amount of rework to document why they decided to risk assess something in a certain way, and how they won't have documentation around how they've gone through that monitoring process. So there's a ton of work that will need to happen if they don't do that today, not even touching upon the fact that it doesn't help trust with your employees, and if your consumers find out that you're using their data in a way that is to build a better AI system. I mean, we saw what happened with a pretty popular video conferencing company when they changed the policies. You know, they almost got canceled. So I think for reasons of consumer alignment, for reasons of trustworthiness for the employees, many companies are self-regulating today.
I think we have time for one more question. Unless Mike, go ahead.
Hi, thank you both for being here. My name is Mitchell Taylor. I'm a graduate of the Global Business Fellowship here at Georgetown. And I also wanted to ask about the challenges of AI regulation, given its black box problem, where the nuance of the technology may not be able to be fully understood by the governments that are tasked with regulating it.
Yeah, so this is a big challenge. Because just understanding what a black box system is requires a lot of education. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with some of the elected members and some of the policymakers and their staff, just explaining how these systems work. And right now, generative AI and AI that's powered by neural networks often suffer from this black box problem. There's been pretty well-known cases of financial services companies with really sophisticated models that were black box models that they never put into production because they couldn't explain it. So where will we land? Most of the regulation that is coming out is also requesting that there be funds allocated for basic research in the explainability of AI systems. There's a construct in the regulation that's currently within the US called the NAIR, and that is to start doing more research to make these systems more explainable and to put a lot of energy around that. But my guess is that we're gonna have to be really sophisticated with our ongoing monitoring when we're using these systems today. And that means creating a lot of scenarios and then validating that the AI is solving for those scenarios in an appropriate way. You're not gonna catch everything, but it's gonna be more of a statistics game in the meantime. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Michael,
you so
anything you want to add?
No, it's good.
I think we have time for one last question.
Michael?
If it's quick.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan and Michael. I'm a first-year MBA student. My question is that if we consider AI to increase efficiency for companies and also do it faster, how do you see the future of smaller and medium-sized firms shaping up who probably do not have the access to this technology?
Yeah,
Go Dan.
that's a really interesting question. I think what we are finding is that there are deep jobs in the AI space. We didn't really get to this question, but in the future, every job will have some degree of working with AI. I imagine that people that are entering college as a freshman will leave by their senior year very proficient with AI. So what the challenge is, we have to manage this gap that happens in time. And I think that's a big legislative challenge that many state governments are trying to figure out how they address, of how they can train the small and medium-sized businesses on the technology as they exist today. But the hope is in the future, as they hire people, those people will come implicit. Everybody will have AI skills or ability to work with AI systems, as opposed to hiring just these deep experts in engineering that are largely gobbled up by many of the big corporations that are paying them a lot of money.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're out of time, but thank you for the fantastic panel.
Energy from
Michael.
your energy. That's good.